All right, WTEW Bible Studies. We're going to be talking about the 7-year peace treaty. Where does that come from? We look at Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27. We've got the angel Gabriel is actually speaking with Daniel. He says, 7 in verse 24, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So, the history of the Jews, they were a kingdom under King David. They were great. And then a couple kings later, they were a divided kingdom. They were sinful, and eventually God just couldn't stand them anymore. They got to be so sinful that he kicked them out of the land. So Babylon took them over, and then the Medes and the Persians took them over. And while Daniel was in the land of the Medes and the Persians, that's when he has this dream. So he'll talk about how after that the Greeks will take them over, and then the Romans will take them over. So they're always in the midst of sin. They're always getting thrown out of the land, or at least overrun by these foreign powers because of their sin. And so when he's talking about thy people, that's the nation of Israel. And they're going to finish that sin so they don't get taken over anymore. To make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity. Of course, Christ did that, and they will recognize that. To bring in everlasting righteousness. Well, we're going to bring in Jesus with his kingdom. And this vision and prophecy is going to be sealed up. So we see that at the end of the book of Daniel, it says seal it up. Looks like this vision is going to be sealed up until right there. So the Jews won't really know about anything that's prophesied by and large. I mean, some of them are coming to Christ, but for the most part, those that reject Christ, they're not going to know any of the words of this prophecy until after it's happened. So right there, they're going to learn that. And to anoint the most holy, that can either be the most holy one or a place that they're going to anoint. So verse 25. Know therefore and understand. Let me back up for just a second. So 70 weeks, that's not 70 periods of 7 days, as it turns out. Those are just 77s, and there are 7 periods of 7 years. So 77s is 490 years is what this prophecy is about. So verse 25, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks the street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. So the Jews are not in their land; they're in the possession of the Medes and Persians. Daniel was there specifically, and in spite of that, and in spite of the Greeks coming, in spite of the Romans coming, they're going to have their city rebuilt to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince. And so they're gonna rebuild things for Jesus. They're gonna have that temple rebuilt, and we'll see that the temple was there even during the time of the Romans. And after the 62 weeks, so 69 sevens, 483 years. After 483 years shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. So Jesus died. So they should have known when Jesus was coming, and they should have known that Jesus died for them after that 69th week. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So princes are spiritual powers. So the prince that came and destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD was the prince of Rome. Titus was the general of the Roman legion, but here we're talking about a spiritual entity. So the spiritual entity causes this Roman general to destroy Israel, to destroy Jerusalem. Not only that, but destroy the temple. And the end thereof shall be with a flood. Well, they're talking about the armies are just going to pour in and flow through it. That's what that means. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. So the city becomes desolate when the Jews are kicked out of it. So it's empty. Desolate is what empty. So verse 27, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. So the he goes back to this prince of Rome. He's going to confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. So that's the last period of 7 years. Confirming the covenant, that's your 7-year peace treaty. So Israel is going to think they're having a time of peace when this revived Roman Empire comes about. That's where we get that verse right there. That's that 7-year period. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. So sometime during this period, the Jews are going to do animal sacrifice. They have a twice daily sacrifice of a lamb. And right here in the midst of this 7 years, although that looks kind of off, that's the middle of the 7 years, they're going to stop that, the twice daily sacrifice. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, which is the Jews in Jerusalem, even until the consummation, even until the end, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So these people that keep getting knocked out of their home because they refuse to recognize Jesus, they're going to get knocked out of there once again. This all happens at the abomination of desolation. So the sacrifice stops, and there might be sacrifice on the Jewish altar. They could be that. There's going to be an image set up in the temple by the false prophet, and that might be the abomination of desolation. Whatever it is, the Jews should recognize that. When they see the abomination of desolation, they're told to run. So a lot of people call this whole thing, this whole period of 7 years, the tribulation. That's actually an incorrect statement. Only from the abomination of desolation to the end of the 7 years. So this 3.5 year period, which is talked about as a time, times, and half a time. So a time would be 1 year, times would be 2 years, and a half time is a half a year. You add those up, you get 3.5 years. 42 months, it's mentioned. 1,260 days. That's all different ways of saying this 3.5 years. At the end of these 3.5 years, well, this, first of all, this Great Tribulation, this is a war between Satan, who as an Antichrist will actually be the one that arises to do this. So we still have the Prince of Rome, the spiritual power there, but we're also going to have a prince from Greece, and he's going to inspire an Antichrist type character, and it's actually going to be the one that we call Antichrist. He's known by different names in the Bible. He's going to lead the charge under the authority of Satan. And there's going to be 2 witnesses that are going to oppose him for this entire 3.5 years. But right at the end of that, the 2 witnesses are going to be killed. And it's going to be like Christmas for the Antichrist and those who worship him. They're going to think that's the greatest thing ever happened. They're going to give presents to one another when these 2 witnesses die. But they are witnesses. They have supernatural powers, and I'm sure that they said they were going to come back to life. So it doesn't say that, but I think they don't let them be buried. So Jesus was buried. He said, destroy this temple in 3 days, I'll raise it up. They didn't really know what he was talking about. But same thing with these 2 witnesses. They're going to come back to life. So they don't get put in a tomb or anything. They're just left out on the ground. And everybody's going to see it. They rise back from the dead. They come back to life. And then they're going to get called up into heaven. So they are first fruits of the first resurrection, the first ones that are going to go up into heaven. So that is the period. All that happens during the 7 years. This is the Great Tribulation. So don't confuse that with the time of God's wrath. That's coming next, and we'll explain that later.